Okay, wir kommen jetzt zu unserem eigentlichen Ehrengast des Tages, Graham Gill. Herzlich willkommen.
When I first came to Holland many years ago, I was very fascinated with a lot of music programs when I watched television, when I had my free time. And I started making regular visits to Germany, usually to places like Emmerich and Essen and Oberhausen, because I wanted to enjoy traveling, because I come from Australia. And I always enjoyed visiting supermarkets like Osso Messe and all those places. But I used to be quite fascinated by another program which was on television that came from ZDF, and it was called the Hit Parade, and I first got to learn my first few German words from Dieter Thomas, and they were Guten Abend or Guten Tag, liebe Zuschauer. So I say Guten Tag, liebe Zuschauer, Guten Tag, liebe Mensa. Hi there, good people. It's a very great pleasure to be here today. I hope if I speak English a little slower, you will understand. Ich spreche ein bisschen Deutsch, and but not so much. But I like to learn, I like to learn these things. So if you have any questions or things you want to ask about radio and those things, if I can answer, then it will be a great pleasure to do that for you. Now I give you to Martin for a moment.
Graham, you're quite an offshore veteran, you can say. We've prepared some questions.
Good.
So let's start with them. First one is, we know you're coming from Australia, and you were rather young when starting your radio career there. Could you please tell us about Australian radio?
Yes, as a young scholar in school, I didn't have much interest. Yes, I had interest in my lessons in learning English and geography and history, my favorite ones, but I was no good at mathematics. And so, as I was also an asthma, my mother thought that it was not much point for me to stay in school till I was 18, 19, as the young people tend to do today. So therefore, she knew that I was interested in working in radio. And so she arranged that I leave school when I was 13 and a half, I think it was exactly, and I would find work in radio, beginning from the ground and working my way up, and doing radio school 3 nights a week. I attended the Vincent School of Broadcasting, where you had to learn to do everything, because in Australian radio you could not work in radio without a diploma from a radio school. And so I learned to do the history of music, the theory of music, and also to learn how to read and write reclaimers, how to read and write news, how to present not just pop music, but also classical music. And of course, as we all know, the majority of the world's most famous classical composers are either from Deutschland or Österreich, if you think of Strauss or Beethoven or Mozart. And so the story goes on. And so we had to learn to pronounce those names, because in Australia, we have real Australian accent. It's bloody awful that to try and say Mozart, you know what I mean? So going to radio school, you learn to get a voice, and to use your vocal cords where they should be. And I managed to do this. And so I graduated with a diploma. But I had to work in radio when I began. I started sweeping the floor, making tea for the other radio guys, and putting records around the record library. And I did this for about 6 months, you know. And there was one very famous radio personality on 3UZ. His name is Cliff Nichols. And I had to take the program, the records, into the studio of him for his Technicus man to play. They were 78s in those days, and we had to take them in. And if the disc jockey or the announcer turned the record over, he was in very much trouble. He had to play exactly how it was. So there were records like Perry Como, Guy Mitchell, Doris Day, Mitch Miller, probably all those things that people don't like the Four Aces. I like them very much myself, but times do change, and the pop music progresses. And I was waiting outside the studio one day to take these records in, and the red light was on and on and on and on. I thought, for Christ's sake, when's Nicky going to turn the microphone off? Because we were forbidden to walk into the studio when the red light was on. Otherwise, we would say in English, the shit would hit the fan. Maybe you can translate this?
No, I don't know.
It'd be very much trouble. Very much trouble. Anyway, I was waiting, and a part of 78's that high, weighed a lot, you know. And he waved me to come in through the glass windows, you know. So I cautiously opened the door, and he said, to the listeners, Mum, because he did the morning program from 9 to 12, Mothers, here comes our little Graham. He's a very shy lad, and he works in the record library. And the reason why I had the name, or was christened Little Graham, was because Nicky's panel operator, or Technicus, was a young guy then. He'd be about 25. I was about 13 and a half. Did all the Technics, because Nicky, at that age, was about 50 himself. And so I took the records, and he said, Graham, don't go away, I want to talk to you. I thought, oh, I must have done something wrong, you know. And he said, no, he said, how's your mother? And I said, oh, she's all right. Is everything okay with the family at home? I said, as far as I know, no, yes. What time do you knock off work today? I said, oh, probably about 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Well, you say hello to your mother from me. Because Nicky did a program for housewives, you see, which later I fell into his shoes in another radio station years later. Anyway, he used to ask me to come into the studio around about 12 o'clock and bring the records in. And in a roundabout sort of way, I finished up on the air as Little Graham, and I had a regular spot about 12 o'clock. He used to ask me on the air, I want this for my lunch, and that for my lunch, and that for my lunch. It could be a brochure, a cas, or a brochure, a salami, or whatever, you know. And I'd have to go out and fetch it and bring it back. And then I remember he used to ask when he wanted corned beef. That's a special. You tell the slacker not to shave the corned beef. It was a bit thin last time, and a bit more mustard. So this went on for quite some time, and so I came on the air in a roundabout sort of way at 13 and a half. And during this time I was still at radio school, and I was told by the head, Lee Murray, he said, there's a job going in 3KZ, that's another of the big stations in Melbourne. They want basically a panel operator, but a cadet announcer. That means you fill in if somebody is ill or somebody is with holiday. And so, would you like to take the job? And so I left 3UZ in good grace and gave my notice in, and I went to work for 3UZ. And there I started out as a panel operator for Alan Freeman, who is another radio colleague now. He's been in England for many, many years, quite famous, doing Top of the Pops and all those programs. He's also retired. He's 73 now, and he's staying in an elderly people's village, where he's quite happy. Probably I'll be there in a few more years, I don't know. But, so that's how my radio started in Melbourne, and then after that my asthma got worse after about 2 years at 3KZ. And the doctor told my mother, your son is asthmatic, he needs to go to a part of Australia where there's a dry climate. And that, of course, was the Riverina area in New South Wales. And so I went there, and firstly I applied for 3 different radio stations. That was 2AY Albury, 2RG Griffith, and 2WG Wagga. They wrote back, but the first offer came back from 2RG, and I spent 10 of the happiest years in radio there in Australia before I came overseas. At the beginning, the first couple of months, I did all shifts from the morning program, the breakfast program, the afternoon program, the evening program, and then the manager found out that I was more or less suited to the Housewives program. And I said, it's strange you should say that, because I said I started my radio career on a Housewives program in a very small way. And so I did that, and I was there for 10 very happy years. But also, they asked me would I do a children's program in the afternoons. That was between 4:30 and 5:30. That's 16:30 to 17:30 hours in the afternoon, Monday to Friday. And I did that, and that was successful. And I did a request show called Saturday Night Requests on Saturday nights. And on the Sundays, which was basically my free day, and because I sang in the church choir there for 10 years, and they asked me would I do a program about tenors. I said, well, can't you get somebody else to do that? I said, it's my free day. They said the sponsor, which was Gordon's Garage Supplies, particularly want to have you. I said, well, it's my free day. And the boss, Ray Gamble, said, well, look, he said, you can record the program. And of course, in those days, the tape recorder had just come in. When I began at 3UZ, it was a wire recorder, and you, if the wire broke, you cut the thing with a pair of scissors and just tied it in a knot, and it all worked, you know. So I worked there, and when the tape recorder was popular, I started recording a program called World Famous Tenors from Gordon's Garage. And that went out a half-hour program each Sunday night, and then I still had my free day. I recorded that on the Dark Harbour on Thursday evening. So that was it, and I stayed with that station, one of my favourite radio stations, for 10 years. And then I wanted to travel and see the world, and I thought, oh, it'd be great to go to places like Italy, Holland, Switzerland, Germany, Austria, and all those places, see all those people, and so I began saving for it over the years, and finally in January of 1966 I gave in my notice. They didn't want me to leave, which I found was a great compliment. They tried to dissuade me from going, and they said, if you ever come back, your job will always be here for you. And I was away for about, I thought, 2 years. But that 2 years didn't actually happen. I came to England after travelling through many parts of Europe, and naturally, being an Australian, I finished up at the Overseas Visitors Club in Earl's Court in London. And I thought, oh God, I didn't come from Australia to meet other Australians, and they complained because they only want to go to pubs where you can drink Australian beer. I thought, we're in England. You drink English beer. You're in England, you meet the English people. Like in Deutschland, you meet the Deutsch people. When in Rome, do as the Romans do. That's the way, I think. So, after a week, I decided to get out of there and find somewhere else to stay, and I found that there were 3 other guys who were interested in a fourth person, being me, sharing an apartment in Nevins Square. And I rang the bell, and Roger D came to the door and said, yes. I said, I'm Graham Gill, I'm just a DJ from Holland, Australia, a radio DJ. I've come to see about the new apartment. Will I do? He said, come in, have some tea, drink and talk, So we've sorted something out, and I'd been there for about 8 or 9 days, and they all had the one manager. The three guys, Roger D, he was a stand-up comedian. There was Nicky North, he was then the lead singer of the Manchester pop group, the Rock and Berries, which is same vintage as Herman's Hermits. And the other guy was John Pierce, who was a pianist at the Piccadilly Theatre restaurant in London, which later burnt down, unfortunately. And so I'd been there about 8 days, and they had the one manager who came, and I was introduced, and I shook his hand. He said, "Oh, by the way, Graham, can you work tonight?" In a real Cockney accent, and I said, "I don't know." I said, "I've only just arrived. I'd like to have about 2 or 3 weeks holiday before I do any work, And he said, "Piece of cake, Wimbledon Palais, £25 a Friday, Saturday night. Dusty Springfield, Rod Stewart, Small Faces. Just put them on, take them off, and spin a few records in between." So the other guy said, "Come on, because £25 was a lot of money in those days." And so I thought, well, okay, give it a go. And I put the Small Faces on, and Rod came on with the Small Faces. And then I span a few records, then Dusty came on, and I went down to the back of the bar, had a few drinks, and I spent a few records when she finished her set, her show. And the manager came to me and said, "Graham," he said, "we have a slight problem here. Have you heard of the pirate station Radio London?" I said, I had heard of pirate radio stations, yeah. He said, "Well, there's a ship called the Galaxy, and it's off the coast of Harwich. And one of their DJs, Tom Edwards, was supposed to be here by now. I think he's caught up in traffic. Could you say you're Graham Gill from Radio London? And here are some jingles, just play those." So I said, "Hi there, good people, this is Graham Gill, the Wimbledon Palais." And so on, so on, so on, so, and anyway, I put Dusty back on for one more set. I went to the back of the bar and had another pint of Guinness, and Tom Edwards duly arrived, along with his, or the Radio London's manager and talent scout, Gordon Shepherd. And they both said, Gordon Shepherd said, "We like the way you work. Can you come to our office on Monday?" So I went to the office at 70 Curzon Street on Monday, and on the Wednesday I was out on Big L on the Galaxy. And I remember I was I was just about to open the microphone on my first broadcast with them. And Tony Windsor, who used to be Tony Withers at 2UA in Sydney, another Australian, put his hand up and said, "By the way, Graham, when you open that mic, you're talking to 10 million people." I mean, in Australia, we might have talked about 10,000 people, 25,000, but 10 million, And so anyway, I did it, And then I'd been with them a short time, and we were coming back on one shore leave on a Greyhound bus, which was parked outside in the vicinity of the railway station. We came off the tender from Harwich. Normally we took the train up to Liverpool Street, and this guy came along, an American fellow called Don Pearson. He said, "Hi, I'm Don Pearson. You guys want to have a free ride on the Greyhound bus? We're going back up to London. Only to buy a train ticket." And so I said to Kenny Everett, I said, "Well, why not do it? Let's go." So off we went up to London, and during the trip up there, Don Pearson said, "How'd you like to work for me?" And I said, "Well, I've just started work with Radio London." And he said, "Well, if you ever need me, here's my card, give me a call, So I thought about it, and after a short time, I contacted him, and they were paying more. Not that money was the main goal at that time in radio for me, but it was a new experience because it was a twin ship. There were two stations on the one ship. You had Radio England, or Swigan Radio England, and also Britain Radio. And so I accepted the job, and I was with them for some time. And I remember we used to come out, you'd be in one studio doing a Rave Up Top 40 show, and then you'd play the theme music or the instrumental music that takes you out of the whole thing. You'd walk through that door at Radio England, and you'd sit down afterwards and do a thing. This is Britain Radio, your music station, your good music station. And this is Graham Gill, we hope you're going to enjoy. Here's something now from Doris Day. You know, and you play it right then, you know. And that's how it was. But it was a nice time, you know. And then, but I didn't get along very well with one of the American DJs called Larry Dean, mainly because he was in charge of the news. And he thought that everybody should sound, if they weren't American, try and sound a bit American, you know. And of course, being an Australian, or I think I've developed over the years what you call not an English-speaking accent, but a European-speaking accent. That's probably what I have now. And I just did it in the way I've always done it, because at the end of the news, we had to give the weather forecast, and then you say. And in London today it's 15 degrees, it's cloudy, and tomorrow some rain, so and so and so and so. And Larry came into the studios one day and said, Graham, when you say the temperature, you don't say 15 degrees. You say it's 15 degrees in the Wide and Wonderful. I said, but Larry, I said, what's the Wide and Wonderful? That's the Wide and Wonderful. I said, Larry, I'm not an American. That's an American station. I said, Larry, we're broadcasting to Britain. So anyway, one thing led to another, and I didn't do what he said. And after some time, I just decided that this place wasn't for me, and so I handed in my resignation. And then I thought, Jesus, no, I'm out of work. Maybe I should go back to Australia. What to do? And then I ran into somebody in Kings Road in Chelsea, and he said, look, They want a barkeeper at the Red House. It's a pub in Chelsea. How would you like to do that? I said, yeah, why not? And so for about 3 months, I was pulling beer in the Red House in Chelsea. But during this time, I was still mixing with the radio people, you know, the old friends and people I knew. And I ran into Jack McLaughlin. And Jack was working at Radio 390 then. And he said, Graham, they're looking for somebody at 390. And your name's come up. Interested. So I said, yeah, that'd be nice, you know. I mean, I enjoyed doing this work for a change, but get back in the radio, why not? And so I went along with Jack, and I met Josephine and Peter James, and they got me to read a script, you know, something like, this is Graham Gill, and welcome to Radio 390. I said, no, not so much that. More British. I said, how do you mean? Well, like this is Radio 390. I said, this is Radio 390, a British family station. It's time now for Eve, the woman's magazine of the air. I got the job. So I was there until the Marine Defences Bill came down. You know, came in. Bloody hell, Harold Wilson, and you know all about him. And so what to do after that?
Carry on.
So we've been having 3 offshore stations. Radio London, Radio England and Britain Radio,
Yes.
and Radio 390. What was the difference and what regarding the atmosphere on board, the difference between the ships? The Radio England ship wasn't that comfortable, I know.
No. Well, in actual fact, if we go back to Radio London, while I still agree that Radio London was perhaps the most, at that time, don't forget Caroline was still around, but at that time they were perhaps the most professional sounding top 40 station. But at the same time, having said that, they were a very difficult group of people to work for. Everybody was on a big high ego trip, you know, and I've never ever been an ego tripper. I mean, that's not really me. And so it was probably one of the reasons that made me think about going over to Britain Radio England after some time. But getting back to Martin's question, the atmosphere on the Britain Radio England ship, at that time when I was there was Johnny Walker, there was Roger Day, there was Col Nichol, he was another Australian, myself, Phil Martin, and then we had the American disc jockeys Ron O'Quinn, Jerry Smithwick, and Larry Dean, and Boom Boom Brannigan. And the American guys were a bit more a bit more egocentric, you might say in that way. But the atmosphere there, after Dean had told me that I had to read the news that way, read the weather that way, and this, that, I thought, well, this is not really me at all, you know. And the atmosphere there was not such a happy one either. The food was actually, the eating was very good, first class, you know. On 390, I think the atmosphere was very positive, very professional, and we had excellent meals because Jeff, the cook, was had worked before at the London Dorchester Hotel, and he was only spirited away from working in a 5-star hotel where royalty sometimes dined, because of the lure that he wanted to get involved in radio, not on the air, but to cook for radio people. And so we used to have regular roast dinners on Sunday, you know, sometimes guns or sometimes roast lamb or all those things, you know. And you will know about the towers we had. One tower was where we ate, the other tower was where we slept. One was with the studios, the other one was with the transmitters and things. That was a very happy atmosphere, and there was carpet on the floor everywhere except for the kitchen. Good, warm, safe beds to sleep in and everything. Then also at Radio North Sea International, it was the same. But before that, I went to Radio Caroline after that, because when the Marine Defences Bill came in, I thought I'd go back to Australia, you know. I thought, oh, well, I had an old girlfriend there called Lola Ho, and I thought, well, I wasn't, I didn't know whether I wanted to get married and tied down with a family or not, but I knew she was there, and we'd been getting around with each other for a couple of years, and so I thought, well, I could go back and do that, and go back to 2RG, where I was very happy. But as it turned out, fate intervened. When I finished with 390, we closed the station down. I'd received a letter from my mother in Australia, who had married a Dutch immigrant years ago when my first father died. Yeah, it should all be in the book, I know. It goes on and on. And she said, since I've been married to your stepfather, well, he has 2 nieces and a nephew in Schiedam, near Rotterdam. Would you go and visit them? He'd like you to see that. And by the way, you've got a stepbrother in Amsterdam, Rob. So he wants you to go and see him. So I went to see him and his wife. And I'd done all that, and then I thought, oh, I'll spend a few days in Amsterdam before I go back to Australia. And I'd stayed I was pretty younger then, so I stayed in a young people's club in Amsterdam, a young people's hostel. And I was wandering through the Rembrandt's Plain in Amsterdam. It's in the very centre, and I had the problem, it's moest mal, you know, I got to piss. No pissoir anywhere, you know, what to do. And I saw this club, which was on the verge of opening up. It had a couple of days to go, but and the doors were open, and the timber men were still banging around, but I saw at the end, Damen und Herren. So I went in and had that, and then I was coming out, and as I was on the way up the door, one of the timber men said, "Hey, rot op man, what denk je nu?" But he rightly, what the hell are you doing here? It's not supposed to be in here, you know. And so I just said, oh, I'm just a Radio London disc jockey from England. I said, I'm sorry, and I walked out the door, and this little short man came running out to me and said, did you say you're a disc jockey from Radio London in England? I said, oh, I was. Oh, I'm John Rosinger. Well, it turned out John Rosinger was, at that time, one of the top film directors in Holland. He had a lot to do with the Sylvia Crystal films, you know. She made a lot of those, in those days, very erotic type films. And he said to me, he said, come and sit down and have a beer. Those fellows that said the bar is closed, or that. We drink and we talk. He offered me a job. He said, I have project promotions. My office is on the Prinsengracht in Amsterdam. How would you like to work for me? I said, well, but doing what? I said, he said, look, he said, this club is opening in a few days. I need somebody to introduce the artists and spin a few records like that. You work for me, you get your own office, and you're in charge of booking the artists, you know. And I thought, well, 6 more months, you know, I made a contract for 6 months. I thought, I'll get back to Australia. Well, everything was going fine, and I was booking in all the top Dutch acts, Dutch groups at the time, T-Set, Swing and Soul Machine, P&Beck, Tripp and Jacobs, and all those artists. Udo Jurgens, we also had him there one time, and he's about my age now, Udo Jurgens. And we had him there, and we had a lot of good times. But after a few months of being there, a guy came along, said, hello, I'm Koen Bakker. He said, have you thought about what you're going to do when you finish your contract here? I said, oh, I'm going to Australia, you know. How'd you like to work for me? He said, I'm your manager. He said, we do small one-night tours, 2 nights, 3 nights into Belgium, into Germany, and basically in Holland. A half-hour DJ, half-hour group, you know. And if it was a weekend, you'd have a couple of nights maybe over or something like that. So I did that, and then the Holland Telstar agency wanted me to do a tour with the Dutch group The Cats to Sweden and Denmark, and that was in 1969. It was getting into 1968, because I arrived in Holland on the 17th of September 1967. Just not so long after the 300 closed. And so I did that to just Denmark and Sweden, and I came back to Holland, and then Koen had other venues for me to work with groups and things. And I said to Koen, I said, look, I said, I'm getting a bit tired of this club work, you know. I said, I really think I should be getting back to Australia. And then I ran into Andy Archer of Radio Caroline, and hey, Grizel, come out, you know, we need you on the Amigo. I said, oh, Andy, I said, it's you know, time to go home. But anyway, I finished up on Caroline with Chris Carey and Tony Allen and Andy and John Meyer and all those other guys, you know. And I did that for a few months, and then it got to the stage where there was nothing financially coming in. So I'd had a tax bill in Holland because I'd stayed longer than I should have, and they wanted me to pay tax. And the rent of my house was due, so that I'm really caught in the net now. How am I going to get home? I've got to pay tax and pay the rent for the house. So what to do? I got in touch with Koen, did a bit more club work for him. And during the time I was working for a soul club in Amsterdam, Brian McKenzie of R&I came in. I said, hey, Graham, you're not on Caroline anymore, but you're doing the club shows now. I said, yeah. I said, well, problem financially. And he said, how would you like to come out to on R&I? I said, great, fine. And so I went out to Radio North International, the voice of Europe, the sound of the world. And I was there until it almost closed. And I was coming off about 2 weeks before North Sea closed. I was coming off the tender and standing on waiting out in Scheveningen was Andy and Ronan, and they started to, in a friendly way, blag me or persuade me in a friendly way that we'd like you to come back to Radio Caroline because there is financial reward now, things are going well, and you know, Graham, you know, with the whole crowd, you know, so I was finally persuaded to go back in, and they said, we'll make you the program director. And I thought, well, it didn't matter to me who was the program director, but that's what I was. And I was there until the Dutch Marine Offences Bill came in. And then it was getting a bit too hot for me to hang around on the ship. And I knew a guy in Amsterdam called Henk Ernst. He had a shop, a record shop, about twice as big as this building here now, this hall. And he said, let's build a Caroline studio here, and you can do the programs from Caroline here. And so I thought, well, the studio would be about as big as the one we've got there. I rang Ronan. He said, great. And he's going to pay for it. I said, yes, great. And I said, are you going to pay for me? Then I started getting money. So, okay. I did that until another few months, until then I had a note under my door in Amsterdam to say that the Dutch authorities knew what I was doing, and if I didn't want to get in trouble with law, I'd better stop with it. So then I reluctantly stopped with Radio Caroline at the time because it was going very well. And then I thought it's about time, what to do now? Yeah, I could go on and on.
This was in 1974, in late 74,
yes.
75.
Yes, I'll write a book. That's the best thing.
Yeah, this is the best thing, yeah. It's amazing, absolutely amazing.
Yes. Sorry.
It was the time of the hippies, the mi amigo, the drugs. They played other music than R&I. Caroline was an album station.
Yes, I know.
R&I was a hit station. What did you like more?
Well, to be totally honest, a lot of this drugs music or drug influence music didn't do a thing for me particularly. But I realized that, having said that, you have to play. I learned from radio school, you can't always play what you want. You have to play what the listener wants. And sometimes you might think it's crap, but you have to play it. And so I just went along with it, and I played some things I like and what the listeners like too, and we struck a happy medium that way. Because that's radio, it's the way it has to be. And I also learned that you don't talk at the people, you talk to the people. You know, you make them feel that you're there with them, you know. And that's how it was. Having said all that, when the final thing happened with the Dutch Marine Offences Bill, Koen Parker rang me. My old manager said, "You want to go on the road again?" I said, "Oh." He said, "Come on." He had a couple of new Dutch groups by then. One was called the Swing and Soul Machine, and another was called Short 66, and the other was Dizzy Man's Band. And he wanted me to rush the tour, do all the club scene with those, you know, half hour me, half hour them. And we used to finish up after we had done a gig. We used to finish up. We'd all meet at a place called the Old Smugglers Club in Bussum. It was just a cozy bar where all the radio and TV people from Hilversum in Holland met, and people like us, all the groups and that sort of people, you know. So we got there, and the manager or the owner of the club, Peter van der Meulen, spoke to my manager and said, "We'd like to have Graham do a summer season here." And I said, going back in the car, driving me home, couldn't say, "Peter wants you to do a summer season for him in the Smugglers Club." So, "Oh, I'm tired of clubs, you know." I said, "I better be getting back to Australia." Anyway, after he had asked me this 3 or 4 times, going back and forth, having a drink there after the gigs, I said, "I know a way to put him off in a friendly way." I said, next time Peter asks me to work in the Smugglers Club for a summer season, tell him if he gets me a job on Hilversum 3 radio, or Dutch radio, I'll do his summer season. About a week later, the telephone rang. It was Peter van der Meulen. Graham, it's me, Peter. I've spoken to your manager, Koen Bakker. We've got you an audition on the Dutch World Service. I said, what? Yes. And I duly went down and passed the audition. And so I was there in Dutch World Service for 8 years. And to cut a long story short, that turned into being around about 1984. I never got back to Australia to live. I've been back in 1976 for a visit, 1979 for a visit, 1983 for a visit, 1989 for a visit, and 1997 and 1999, and here I am here. So it's I'm still very happily now a European from the EU. So that's more or less it as it goes now, you know.
Now you have become a Dutch citizen.
Yes, I have, and I come regularly to Germany as often as I can to visit people and do some shopping here, and it's very nice, and I'm very happy here. So there you are.
Yeah, I remember quite well those programs on the World Service. I heard it several times, and it was you did some really music programs, some music shows, which were rare on the World Service.
Yes.
Beside of this Paul Meyer show or what was going on there, this special Sunday World Service things, and okay, making news and interviews and all those things. So this was, I think, a stage where you had really, once again, the high professional broadcasters with you, because on some other stations, I think you were rare. You were really the very lonely, really trained and educated broadcaster on many people's try and error people's, yeah.
Yeah, I suppose that was so, but I never really thought of it that way, because I guess it was in the back of my mind that I had radio training in a radio school, but I never really thought so much about it, and I knew I had a diploma hanging up my old bedroom back in Australia, but no, I worked with the other guys, and it never occurred to me as to whether they had radio training here. I just assumed that they must have had radio schools in Europe or in England, and that the other guys must have been to them, or they must have had voice training. Because I know if you want to be actor in films, like, you know, then you have to go to a film academy in Germany or Holland or England or wherever you happen to live, you know. So I naturally assumed that maybe that was so. But as I later discovered that this was not the case, and most of the other guys just began as they were. And having said that, there was some very top talent that came out that has never had, would have never had any training at all. I mean, you know, there are many other guys that have paved and made for themselves good careers without the radio school. So yeah, although I notice in Amsterdam now, sometimes I go into town to do a bit of shopping, and for about 18 months now they've got a radio and television academy just opened up by the Waterlooplein in Amsterdam, which I guess is probably for training the current influx of radio and TV people as it is today. Because, as I said earlier, don't forget, when radio today, it's totally different to what I began with. It was called steam radio, because we had turntables. We could change the needle after every record. You could see when a record was finishing, so you could come in and do a voiceover straight away. And with these CD things, it's a little bit confusing, you know. I'm not saying it's bad, but I think the old way you could project your personality better in the old way of radio than today. But then on the other hand, maybe I'm wrong. You know, on that.
I just had this afternoon interesting discussion also with Sietze concerning the audience of the Radio Caroline today and the Radio Caroline satellite service. And yeah, it is quite to understand that we have a certain audience, and this audience grew up with a certain kind of music, and the audience is getting older and older with the disc jockeys, and it is one of the things that such a station like Caroline, if it's now growing on the cable and so, must refresh also the audience somehow to survive, to get on the survival. This brings me to the question to you about your time back in Australia, producing children's programming.
Oh, yeah.
Because when I remember quite that you told this story about maybe on the World Service of RNI or somewhere that you made those kinder programs in Australia. And so I thought this maybe is one factor that the European commercial radio is ignoring today. We have children programs on the public channels, but I don't know if in the European commercial radio any station is doing any children programming, and so the children are stuck to TV and things like this. But to attract the people, the young people, to listen to the radio and to build up an audience this way, should be a thing even commercial networks or commercial radio stations should think about in the future. The only thing I know is the Disney network in the United States. So can you imagine commercial radio doing children programs in Europe today, and how should one establish such a programming? Would it make any sense from your viewpoints?
In the first case, I think it would make a lot of sense, but the problem is today you have another generation of young people, and it must be very. I'm not a parent, but my stepson and his wife have a young baby now, and he's about 7 months, 2 or 3 weeks old. He'll grow up into a new generation of what you call this rap music, which is I don't like at all, mainly because there's a lot of swearing and very bad words in it. Sing about degenerate things, and it's very bad for the people. It must be very bad for the parents of the children today to know that they've got kids that are about 7, 8, 9 years old growing up and have to hear this sort of stuff. This wasn't around in the day when you did children's programs or when I did them. I used to read children the Hans Christian Andersen children's stories and the Grimm fairy tales in those days with background music, and I did all the animations with the different voices. I used to give them birthday calls. Little Freddie Thomas was 1 year today, or Mary Rose, she's 5 years old today or so, and you advertise children's products, and you talk to the children, and I was Uncle Graham for 10 years. Yeah. But you don't know. It's what you say. It's not on commercial radio today. I think you might find it on national radio, but I've not heard any children's programs on Dutch radio. I think the nearest thing they have in Holland is probably Sesame Street or something like that, which I think in Germany too. I don't know what you have here, but I think it's a vacuum really that needs to be brought back and filled, because I think with the way young children are growing up today, and when they get into their teens and with all the crime and what's going on, it's influenced by a lot of this rubbishy music that's coming out into their ears. And mind you, also having said that, I mean, if you watch television today, just about they won't watch a film unless there's blood and violence in it. I won't. I mean, if I'm watching television, whether I'm watching art in Germany or Dutch television or on the satellite, I won't watch anything unless it's a story film. I don't like violence or that on television or radio.
Yeah, thank you for this. You have already mentioned Ronan O'Reilly and the managers of the...
I saw him 3 weeks ago in London.
You have been at this reunion in London?
Yes, we saw Ronan a few weeks ago. We had a big reunion in London with all the DJs of the mid-60s up until about between 64 and 74, like David Travers, Mike O'Hearn and Tony Blackburn and Johnny Walker and all those guys, you know, and a lot of John Aston from R&I, Roger Scott, Robbie Dale, and many of the other guys. But we're all of us were from about 50 up to about between 50 and 70, and Ronan was also there for that. And we had a good old get together and a chat there then. It was very, very good.
I'd like to go back to R&I. What are your memories of Edwin Bollier and Erwin Meister? What kind of guys were they? I remember then that in 1971, Andy Archer told the public R&I was a simple spy ship for the German Democratic Republic, East Germany. So what is with this Meister and Bollier?
I think Andy was trying to make a sensation there. I think, as far as I'm concerned, Meister and Bollier were two of the nicest guys I've ever worked for. They were gentlemen, and they were very positive. The money came in on time. It was, if any of you have had the chance to visit the Libo in its time, then inside the ship it was just, everything was just right. We all had our own cabins, and there was a code that we had cabin boys, we had cleaners and all those as well as things, but you were responsible also for maintaining a clean appearance on the ship, and also dressing, I'm not saying a collar and tie, but taking a regular shower, washing and keeping your cabin tidy, and you could eat your breakfast off the floor in the galley on the Radio North Sea. It was so clean. It was very, very clean. It's about one of the cleanest ships I've worked on, as of the ships, you know. And I had a very, very beautiful time there. Very professional station.
And the Miamigo was the most beautiful ship.
The Miamigo was also a beautiful ship. Unfortunately, and it was shipshape and tidy. The only problem there, they had a lot of problems, of course, with the generators and things. So there was quite a lot of oil around, and the ship used to toss around quite a bit. But no, on the whole, it was also fairly well clean, you know. But no, if you ask me the question which was the cleanest ship I've worked on, it would be R&I. I'm not going to say it was any other, you know, but I think in my career as a broadcaster in Europe, as I look back on my memories, and there are many good ones and a few bad ones. We all have bad ones too. But I've enjoyed a very happy career here, and I've got special memories on the times of all the stations I've worked on. I've got many fond memories of Radio Caroline, very many fond memories. It was, wherever I was, except for Swinging Radio England and Larry D.
Vielleicht noch Fragen im Publikum.
Yes, I have a question. What are you doing now, except being here? Do you work still for a radio station?
Well, I do the odd special for the Radio Caroline studio in Harlingen. I was doing a regular thing every Monday, of course, every Monday night. But there was quite a lot of travelling involved because I live in Amsterdam, and we'd have to go up by car to Harlingen and sometimes there wasn't the I needed a technic as a panel operator, and there just wasn't one around all the time, and it's a computerized thing, you know. And I have enjoyed doing those programs, but it became impossible after about 6 months to get the continuity totally together. But I will be doing some more programs. So Anna Hondeman has asked me if I'll do some more programs for them in the future, which of course I will. And he said he would pick me up and take me there and bring me back. So I'm sure we'll get something sorted out there. I did a special with Tony Allen on the satellite in Maidstone. Some of you might have heard that in, I think it was May, was it? And I had Tony on the telephone. He rang me last week. And so we've agreed that we'll do another special in Maidstone sometime before Christmas. So that'll be maybe somewhere towards the end of October or November. And yes, I still enjoy doing it, you know. It's, you see, I don't drive a car, which can be a bit awkward. And if there were a couple of turntables in the studio, I could probably manage to fiddle with it myself. But as you know, these days, it's a totally different setup in radio. Those of you who have worked in radio and who are familiar with the old turntables and that sort of thing will know that, you know. I find if you're pushing a button for say, even if you're playing, say, I give an example, Out of Time, Chris Farlow, which is one of the biggest hits Carl ever played in my time, in those days. You like to voice it over, okay, that's possible, but you want to come in on the end of the thing because it's fading away. You can't look to the record that's going around and see when it's about to finish, because it's not on there. It's in a box in a computer in a satellite thing, and you just got to guess it. And sometimes you might wait. By the time you want to come over, it's faded out anyway. The little things like that go with the modern technology of radio today, which I think that maybe the younger fellas can maybe handle, but it can be difficult for we older people. And I've been in radio, you might say, if you take into consideration the special programs that I do now from time to time for Radio Caroline, then I'll have been in radio for around 50 years, and that's quite a bit, you know. I've enjoyed every minute of it, and I'm still willing to carry on, so, you know.
I have still one more question. All your experiences we heard here now are also the history of the pirate stations. Why don't you write that down in a book? I think there are a lot of people who are interested.
Well, people have said to me I should write a book about it, you know. But, and then they said what I need to do is to get a ghostwriter.
Maybe Hans can do that for you.
Yes, maybe I need to come up here and spend a week in Germany somewhere, or somebody who's willing to help me with that. And if there was somebody to help me, then I'd be more than willing to spend the time just doing that, you know.
Oh, that's a chance.
So if any of you are interested in that, get in touch with Jan here. You can ring me up. He's got the telephone number, and I'll come up here.
But where do you live now?
Amsterdam.
In Amsterdam.
Yeah. Yes, it's quite a way. I mean, no, I suppose you can always jump on a train and come up, you know. Yes. I've enjoyed it today, by the way. It's been very nice.
Have you ever been paid royalties from Junior Walker and the All Stars? Did you meet the people?
No, I've never met Junior Walker. No, I haven't. And I've never been paid any royalties. But I was speaking to Peter earlier today. We're having a beer out there, and in the houses they build in Holland today, the modern houses, they don't have what you call an upstairs attic, we say, or what you call it. They have what you call a kelder, or a box downstairs. And I went down there a couple of days ago because I knew I was coming here. I'm a bit of a sentimentalist. I've kept all the fan mail I've had in the last, from 1966 to about 1974. They're in 2 coffers, so big, this high, and I'm not big-headed when I say that, but there are thousands of letters there. And I was just curious the other day. I went downstairs to get a bottle of wine, because I keep the wine down there as well, if they have a steak, you know. And I thought, Christ, I knew I was coming here. I must have a look and see what's in this, you know. And I came across a DS, a slide, you know, amongst all these letters. I thought, oh, that'd be nice. I must get a few copies of that thing printed on and photographed. There's one for you, by the way. I'm going to give it to you, but when I get into Bart's car later on to get it. And also for Peter, and there's one for you. And I had this picture printed. It was Lee in the studio of R&I. It would be probably, 73, 74, something like that. And I thought, my God, that's going back a long, long time. And so, what was the question again?
It's concerning Junior Walker and your All Stars. Did you met the people?
No, I never met the person, but when I found the slide, I found a piece of paper like this where I had written a whole text of Way Back Home from start right through the record to finish. Because when I sing it on the radio, I normally just sing about halfway through the thing and then faded away. Just don't bore the listeners too much. But I've decided now that because people might like to enjoy that, I'm going to finish it and try and make the whole finish up, the full recorded version, as a combination of the time I had on RNI and Radio Caroline. So that way, because I've only sang it on those 2 stations. So I've decided that I'm going to finish that as well, and then maybe in the future somebody might like to buy a copy, you know.
So we have a little present for you too. Some weeks ago in London, we've been meeting each other, and I gave you the first CD, and now you're getting the second CD of 2 excellent R&I recordings.
Oh, it's wonderful.
And it includes the Junior Walker track, the instrumental version.
So it's wonderful.
So maybe you try and make another recording of it.
Oh, that's wonderful, Martin. Thank you very, very much. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Jan. Thank you. Yeah, that's great. It's all in here, isn't it? Yes.
So the second hour of the
second
request
hour.
hour, the R&I request hour.
Oh, that's very, very good. Yes, yes. That's very good.
And Graham Gill singing.
Am I singing on this?
Yeah.
Am I? Oh, that's wonderful. That's great. It's really good. To look in the tide, going back in time. Well, that's a long, long, long time ago. It's, I don't know what to say, but thank you very, very much. Thank you.
Yeah, something else ready prepared
For you, an R&I Coffee Mug.
We hope it will be becoming also a future item, collector's item to produce those coffee mugs.
Thank you, thank you very, very much. It'll be great for my tea. Thank you very, very much, everybody. It's very kind of you.
Have you any questions left? I don't think we have not left any of the questions we have prepared, because Graham covered really 50 years of broadcasting history. And well, if you would do courses for young broadcasters, I think it would be some idea for the people to look different at their today's technique job.
Well, that will be a pleasure if anybody would be interested in that.